All right, hey, we're going to knock out chapter 3 here. Hope everybody's doing well. This will be the last chapter of the first unit. So after you get through with chapter 3, you have the reading quiz for the chapter, and then you also have the chapters 1, 2, and 3 test, which will be multiple choice. It's not too bad. So here we go. Looking at social societies or colonial societies in the New World. The Spanish are going to set up a system in which people from Spain are going to be on the top. They are going to be Spaniards that are born in Spain. They're going to rule society. Spaniards that are born in the New World are a step below them. And then you have mixed Spanish and native blood. And then you have everybody else, the natives, the African-American slaves that are brought over. And that's how society is set up. So the Spanish of European birth have have a little bit more power in the New World than the Spanish New World birth, and we go through and kind of explains there. The Spanish are going to establish the first settlement in North America, which is in Florida. Remember, they established settlements in Mexico, which they called New Spain, and then they also established. Before that, they established settlements in Hispaniola, which is a modern day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. But the first one that's going to be in North America is going to be in St. Augustine. Basically, it's there to protect ships from French and English privateers. Privateers are just pirates that operate with the blessings of European governments like French and English royalty to steal treasure ships and those types of things. Privateers are a little different than pirates because pirates don't have an actual government. This age of pirates that is glamorized with Pirates of the Caribbean and all of that stuff. It's true. It happens. It's about a 2 or 3 decades long. It happens in the late 1850s, early 1960s, late 1580s, early 1600s, where pirates operate out of the Bahamas. Really without government. They kind of have their own islands set up and they do those types of things. Again, we talk about the depopulation of the native populations, and then Sir Francis Drake sealing, burning down St. Augustine in 1586. Okay. There's the fort. You can go there, visit it today. It's a pretty cool city. It's all old stone. Like the old part of the city is all old stone, and it's pretty neat. Okay. Again, Spanish are looking to spread Catholic faith, and so they set up missions all throughout the American Southwest, places like Santa Fe, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Antonio. And they're just putting Catholic priests in there. They offer education, and it's going to create some harsh feelings between the natives and the Spanish. And so you have a couple of revolts. The Pueblo Revolt is one of the more famous ones, in which the Pueblo Indians revolt against the missions, the Spanish leaders in Santa Fe. And they kill a bunch of Spaniards. And then, a decade later, they have some drought and they have some issues, and the Spanish are able to regain control of the area, and the Pueblo relocate. A small group relocates to southwestern Kansas out by Liberal, and then they're forced back into areas more controlled by the Spanish. So here we go. There's the ruins out by Liberal. Okay, the French and the Dutch we've already talked about. The fur trade, and they settled along that St. Lawrence River into the Great Lakes, out to the Atlantic Ocean. The Dutch set up modern day New York, and the Dutch are a relatively small country, the Netherlands, and so they encourage settlement from all over Europe, and so England, French, even some Spanish. Some Jews from modern day Poland come over, and they settle in the New York area, and they get involved in trade. And so the Dutch are pretty pretty open to that. They settle in modern day New York. They call it New Amsterdam, and they have a relatively small population there. Okay, talked about that. The French don't really have a whole lot of permanent settlements in the New World. Quebec is going to be the first one around 1640, and again, that's almost that's what 30 years after the British start. The French and the natives, they trade quite a bit. I mean, the French are just really there for the money. They're trading for furs and for hunting and trapping rights. And so they give them they give the natives weapons, and the natives will use these weapons to try to expand their hunting and trapping areas. And so it leads to a situation where violence between the American tribes increases along the Great Lakes region because of new technologies introduced to those tribes. The French set up Jesuit missionaries, but they don't really have a whole lot of influence. The first New World saint is Lily of the Mohawks, and you can read about her in the text a little bit. There she is. Okay. English settlements. These are going to be the important ones to us. The English are going to see a huge increase in population in England due to the improved diet from corn, an increase in calories, the diversification of diet from basically being grain-based and bread-based to the introduction of vegetables. So make sure that you're eating vegetables. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move my computer there. And so you're also going to start to see the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution in England and the restriction of land use for the common people. And so it's going to lead to increased levels of poverty. And so a lot of middle-class people or people that can afford to will move to the New World. Some people will come to the New World as indentured servants, and we'll talk about them a little bit later here in the slideshow. But people from Europe, especially from England, are looking at the New World and the American colonies as a way to get their hands on land, which was unavailable in much of Europe during that time. And just a way of new life, a way of controlling, hey, if you come to the New World and you get 100 acres, you can make a life out of that, and you can control your life, and you can be in charge of your own life, and no one can take that away from you. And that is something that wasn't available in Europe. Okay, you see the populations spring here in Europe, the 1600s. Let's say, in 1300, this is the Black Plague right here, 1350. But you're probably looking at a population of 3 million, right? And by 1600, you're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 million. So you've doubled, and then you're going to skyrocket from there. And so even just doubling the population is going to cause a lot of people to look for new ways and new places to live. There's really two types of settlements in the New World. The first one is going to be a commercial venture, and those are going to be kind of classified into this idea of the Chesapeake Bay model of a colony. Virginia, Maryland, those places are going to settle on the Chesapeake Bay, and they're going to be commercial farming. They're going to grow things like tobacco. Not necessarily cotton yet, because cotton is so labor intensive and cotton gin hasn't been invented that it's not profitable. But tobacco is very profitable. Indigo is very profitable. It's a dye. It's a blue dye that you use to dye fabrics. And then some places in the American South, like South Carolina, rice is going to be a popular profitable crop, a cash crop. And then in North Carolina, growing or processing tar is going to be a main economic output. So these colonies in Virginia, Maryland, and further south are going to be based on commercial agriculture. So tobacco, indigo, rice, tar. anything that you can produce that you can sell for money, and we're focusing on making money. To counter that, in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, so the New England colonies, these are going to be set up. The first one is going to be set up, of course, by the Pilgrims. And then a lot of the Puritans in England and the rest of Europe are going to move to, some of the Puritans are going to move to this region, looking for religious freedom or religious, okay, we'll call it religious freedom for them. They're coming to America to practice the religion that they want to, but they're not coming to America to practice religious freedom for everybody. So like, although the Massachusetts Bay Colonies, or like Plymouth is established by the Puritans, and they were persecuted in the Netherlands, they were persecuted in England. It wasn't like when they got there, they persecuted anybody that didn't believe and practice the exact same way that they did. And so they kick a lot of people out of the original Massachusetts Bay Colonies. And that's why like Connecticut and Rhode Island get established by these splinter groups. Pennsylvania gets settled by the Quakers. And so you have that, and people are just looking for a new way of life with religious freedoms, and that's what we're looking at: money and religion. So we talked about that we grow tobacco. Some of these Chesapeake Bay colonies are actually set up by businesses in England, so people will pool money together and find people that want to go and live in the New World and basically produce goods to be sold, and the profits are split. Yeah, and they're so focused on looking for gold and silver and growing tobacco that the original Jamestown colonies run out of food very quickly within that first year. And you know, they would eat like shoe leather or whatever, tree bark, trying to survive because they didn't plant any crops to feed themselves. They were so busy looking at getting rich. But shortly thereafter, Virginia and Jamestown kind of figured it out, and they began to grow food to feed themselves and food to sell like tobacco. Maryland gets founded as a place for Catholics to move, practicing Catholics in England that were facing persecution. They moved to Maryland, but they quickly realized there's money to be made. Tobacco is very labor intensive, and so one of the things that these people are going to do is, again, we talked about corporations owning the plots of land and bringing people over. Well, one of the ways they're going to do that is through indentured servants, and so these are going to be poor English people that agree to come to the New World and work for a certain number of years. Kind of like slavery. You're going to be treated a little bit better than slaves during this time frame, but like you're going to work for 5 to 7 years in exchange for food and clothes and a paid passage to the New World. And then after that time frame, you're going to be freed, and then hopefully you can find a plot of land for yourself. And that's the plan. I don't have a way to make it in Europe, but I can go over to America and I can work like a dog for 5 or 6 years for somebody else, and then I can work like a dog for the rest of my life, trying to make a foothold for myself and my family. There's tobacco. A lot of indentured servants. They couldn't marry. They couldn't start families. It's very similar to slavery, in which they're subject to the will and temperament of their landowners. People can be beaten. Their contracts can be sold. You get convicted of a crime or get set up for a crime, you could have more years added to your sentence. And women are part of this indentured servants that come over too, and they work in houses and whatever. And a lot of them are mistreated or raped or assaulted in some way by their landowners. They don't have legal repercussions to pursue. Okay, and so Virginia, looking for people to get people to move over, they offer a system in which they pay for their own way if people can pay for their own way to the New World, they can get 50 free acres of land to help settle. And so if you can get your family to the New World, well, then you get 50 acres of land for free for yourself, and then 50 additional acres for every servant or family member that you bring with them. And this is just free land. This is land that's just sitting there, and they're just encouraging people to move to the New World. So Virginia is going to bring over relatively wealthy people with this hedge right system, and then they're also going to bring over indentured servants, because if you can bring over indentured servants, you get an extra 50 acres of land. And I mean, at that time, 50 acres of land, you could make it, you could be a self-sustaining farmer on a small plot of land like that. Okay, talks about the Potawatomi Empire. Basically, you have 30 tribes of Native Americans. You have a bunch of people, 20,000 people, and you're going to have conflict as the Europeans start to expand westward into tribal lands. And you can read about Pocahontas and John Rolfe and all of that stuff. There we go. There's Pocahontas. She gets actually sent over to Europe and gets used as a marketing ploy to sell Virginia tobacco. But there's Pocahontas converting to Christianity, and there she is on the tobacco tobacco pouch that people would have sold back in the day. So you have more conflict between the natives and the Europeans, and you can read about that in the text. Okay, let's go here. Okay, so slavery in the North America or the New World, at least for Europeans, is for English, not for Europeans in general, but for the English, are going to begin on the Caribbean sugar islands. I think Barbados is the first island, European island, or let me start again. Barbados is the first English island to have slaves imported, and they worked on sugar plantations, sugar production. Sugarcane production is very labor intensive, just like tobacco, just like cotton. And so they need the English need a large amount of available labor. And so they're going to meet that, bringing in African slaves. They're going to follow the roadmap of slavery in the New World, which is this chattel system in which slaves are basically thought of as property and not as people. And slaves and their offspring or their kids are born into slavery as well. And so for Europeans in the New World this time, Africans that are brought over in slavery are no different than cattle or dogs or whatever. They're just seen as pieces of wealth or pieces of property. And so there's a picture of the sugarcane plantations. Okay, so 1619, the first American slaves are brought to North America, and they works as servants, not necessarily properties. And if you can convert to Christianity, you gain your freedom. But by 1690, the system of slavery is replaced by the chattel system we just talked about. The big push for African-American or slave labor in the Chesapeake Bay colonies and in the American South happens after 1676. In 1676, we have a uprising called the Bacon's Rebellion, which is relatively important and gets overshadowed a lot. Nathaniel Bacon is a former indentured servant. He comes over, he works, he works his time off, and looks for new land. And there's lots of indentured servants during that time frame that have been freed from their servanthood, and they're looking to expand, in large chunks of land, just like the landowners that brought them over. And as they push further and further west, they run into Indian tribes that control that land. And so there's violence between the settlers and the natives. And the establishment in Jamestown wants to keep kind of the status quo. They don't want, they don't want warfare with the natives. and they try to restrict westward expansion of these former indentured servants. And so these former indentured servants kind of rise up against the rich landed aristocracy of the New World, and they attack Jamestown. They burn it to the ground. They attack the natives, and a small civil war breaks out between basically the rich and the poor in the New World in 1676, at least in Virginia, around the Jamestown area. And King Charles II from England sends troops over to squash this uprising, right? To control these poor people and put them in their place. And this Bacon and his supporters are caught, and Bacon is going to die of dysentery before he can be brought to trial. And so this is the first real conflict in the New World between the wealthy and the everyday the populace, let's say. And so Bacon's followers are mostly poor whites that came to the nation as indentured servants, and they're looking for ways to get started in the world. After Bacon's rebellion, you see a movement in the wealthy to move away from a workforce based on indentured servants and to focus more on chattel slavery, or to bring in more Africans that are enslaved. And there's some, just basic economy there. You don't have to replace your workforce every 5 to 7 years. You don't have to pay for people to come over. And then two, there's no need for new lands. You have the land, you have the workers, and then your property is working your property. And so that's the big shift in the New World from indentured servants to enslaved Africans, and that's going to one of the defining features is going to be the Bacon Rebellion. Now you're going to read in your primary source or your secondary source reading for this chapter about improved economy in England, and that's possibly partly true, but there's poverty still widespread in England during this time frame. People are still looking for land. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be immigrating to the United States. But what you're seeing a change from the wealthy willing to pay to bring poor people to the New World, to the wealthy willing to buy property in the form of African slaves, or African people that are enslaved, in place of bringing over poor Europeans to work for 5 or 7 years to pay off servanthood. Okay, so laws are put in place to limit freed blacks, and so you start to see this is the start of the separate legal systems for whites and blacks, and the beginnings of blacks being treated like second class citizens, even the freed blacks during this time frame. Okay, in England, New England, you're going to run into similar problems. The Puritans come to the New World seeking religious freedom, but then they take away religious freedom from anybody else that doesn't believe like them. They denounce many social practices. The Puritans do, at least, like bear baiting, which was tying bears up, like small bears, up to poles and letting dogs devour them. I guess that was a good time. Drinking, dancing, those types of things. And so you can see that. And I'm going to let you kind of just go through these slides here with New England and read those for yourself. Make sure that you're noting these ideas of religious intolerance in different things, and then make sure that you're aware of the tensions that are going to rise between the New England settlers and the Native Americans that own land there. As New England starts to grow in population, and that population starts to expand westward, they're going to run into natives and their lands, and we have King Philip's War, which is the end of the friendly relationships between the settlers and the natives of the New England area. So, okay, we kind of went through that pretty quick, but I don't want to sit here and bore you with all this. You guys can read through these slides on your own and read the text. But make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're getting the source readings done, your quizzes and your tests for this unit. And we'll see you in chapter 4 here shortly. So have a great day. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.